So, I've been sniping on Delta Force for about 200 hours now, so I thought I would give you my best sniping tips and tricks I've discovered in both the warfare and extraction mode. We'll cover the basics, the best sniper loadouts, what to avoid, and of course the optimal strategies to get you the most snipes while staying alive. If you think I've missed anything, then put it down in the comments, and if this helps you, then give it a like and consider subscribing. Everything will be timestamped below. Now, without further ado, we once again have the 3 basic rules of sniping in FPS games, and specifically Delta Force. Of course, number 1 is that you never stop moving unless you're about to take a shot. Being stationary is a death sentence in this game, so get into the habit of at least strafing left and right to avoid being an easy target. Check corners before running around them, and make sure to always be running between cover when traversing the map, avoiding the open at all times. The second rule is never using prone to snipe from position. This is the same for most modern FPS games. You do not gain an advantage by being prone like you do in real life. You can do everything that proning provides at any range by standing and moving around. Remember that this game has a very obvious scope glint on any scope over 4x, thus trying to be stealthy at range doesn't work. If you prone to try and conceal yourself in a position far away, the scope glint will instantly make you an easy target. Not to mention that this game also has character pin lighting, meaning that your player model will be highlighted to everyone in the game, even in the bushes. However, there is a way to entirely remove the scope glint that I will explain later in the video. In this game and others, we use proning as a last resort, but you only use the prone when you have cover in front of you whilst being shot at. Proning in the open without cover will not help you in any way. Anyone arguing that you need to use a bipod, you can steady your scope just as easily by using the hold breath mechanic. The third rule, as always, if they're moving, you go for the body shot, and if they're stationary, then you go for the headshot. Every single bolt action in this game is a 1-shot headshot and a 2-shot body shot. Enemies in Delta Force specifically can move extremely fast and twitchy, and trying to hit headshots on enemies moving is near impossible. The body hitbox is much larger than the head and way easier to hit if they're moving around. Luckily, this game has very forgiving bullet velocity, meaning you have to worry less about leading targets and bullet drop. So, moving on to actual sniping techniques. Let's say you actually have a nice concealed position with plenty of cover to hide behind at longer ranges. What we want to do is scan for targets. Scope in for a couple of seconds whilst moving around, check the obvious spots, and then unscope for a couple of seconds. Never stay scoped in on just one position. Keep a wide field of view to be aware of your surroundings. This will also help you spot new targets in different areas. Use your teammates as a buffer and an early warning system. See where they're shooting or being shot from and focus your attention there. You should never be the player at the front of the group. Always be behind the bulk of your teammates. Once you see a target, try and have your screen centered on the target before aiming in, making it easier to adjust once scoped. As we've said, if they're moving, just try and aim for the center of mass, but if they're stationary, aim for the head. When you're ready to fire, use the steady aim breath for about half a second and take the shot. Don't just hold your breath whenever you scope in. And if you don't get the kill straight away, just keep firing as long as you're not being shot at. You should get into the habit of trying to unscope between each shot as well. This allows you to check your surroundings and move around faster. Don't just sit in your scope waiting for the perfect shot. As we always say, you miss every shot you don't take. Players in this game are constantly moving around, so just take the opportunity to get any hit in as opposed to just trying to hit a headshot every time. When aiming for moving targets, games like this with bullet physics mean you need to lead your shots. Don't track your targets directly, always place your crosshair where you think they're going to move to. If they know they're being shot at, then they'll likely move to the nearest cover, so put your crosshair in the place they're most obviously going to run to. When aiming at multiple targets, always take out the enemies aiming at you first. They're usually standing still as well, and they'll take you out if you don't focus them. Once there are no enemies aiming at you, prioritize the targets that are not moving first and the most exposed. Until someone actually turns around, you can just keep firing until you're discovered. When dealing with other snipers, never peek the same angle more than once. If you peek an angle and miss your shot, the other sniper can just hold their aim on that spot and easily snipe you when you come back. I know it's tempting to just get another shot off, but just reposition every single time. And talking of positioning, in this game, there's almost a broken head glitch, meaning that bullets originate from the top of the player model as opposed to the actual gun. This means that you're actually hardest to hit when peeking over the top of cover with just your forehead showing. Picking positions where you have cover that's just tall enough to look over is extremely strong. As with most modern games, trying to use hills and bushes for cover just doesn't work and you're extremely easy to see. Don't bother trying to conceal yourself. Try and find cover with multiple angles to peek from so you can always switch after each shot. Buildings and elevation are still very strong because again you can utilize this head glitch by hiding the rest of your body from enemies below. Try and pick positions with the best view over objective. That is likely where players will be stationary and focused elsewhere. This game is actually quite linear in a lot of the maps, so you want to find locations with long sight lines, elevation, roads, corridors and alleys are perfect for this style of sniping. And let's not forget that this game has a lean function. And as someone that can abuse peeking for as little time as possible for maximum damage, you want to lean peek any and all angles when at a corner. When checking corners, always quickly lean peek it first to see if there's anyone there before fully committing to aiming down it. This is especially helpful in the extraction mode, where one bad move is instant death. If you can get used to it, use the lean constantly, even when in the open, to make hitting snipes on you even harder. A sniper aiming at you will have a hard time headshotting you if your head is also moving from side to side. Sometimes the best method of counter sniping is moving around as much as possible till the other player misses, giving yourself a window of time where you can aim whilst they're still rechambering and stationary. As for jumping and sniping in this game, it's a little bit messy. You can jump over cover and aim down sight with a huge amount of scope sway, but if you time the shot for the apex of the jump, it can be somewhat accurate and it works great as a last resort before getting pushed. To avoid being sniped yourself as you're running around the map, just be mindful to move between the points of cover. Pick the routes that always give you the best option to dive out of danger as opposed to the optimal path for speed. Now, 2 extra rules for Delta Force specifically is avoid any close range combat with snipers. Close range sniping is much less effective in this game compared to Battlefield or Call of Duty. The time to kill at close range is way too fast and you will never get a one-shot chest shot. Even the strongest sniper in the game does 70 damage maximum to the chest at point blank. The time it then takes to pull out a secondary after hitting a body shot is also way too slow. You'll be dead before you can even pull it out. No scopes are actually more inaccurate as well than other games, and the chance of getting a headshot with the extreme flinch is pretty slim. However, if you get caught off guard, you might as well fire one single shot before getting into cover. If you're ever forced to fight at close range, luckily the secondaries in this game are very strong. The Deagle being a one-shot headshot, two-shot body, and the Glock being a pray and spray machine. Just use your secondary for almost all close range cases, and I'll give you good builds for these guns later in the video. Hip fire with sidearms, however, is still very strong. In most cases with the Deagle, you don't really aim down sight if they're within 5 meters. Just hip fire and spray for the highest chance of survival in most cases before that automatic time to kill kicks in. And the final rule for sniping specifically on Delta Force is actually use your hero ability. Unlike Battlefield 2042, this game has very strong offensive abilities to utilize while sniping. For Warfare, the best operator to use is Luna for the longer ranges. Constantly use your scanning arrow whenever it's available to easily track targets and get huge point bonuses just for doing it. If there's smoke blocking your vision, use your scanning arrows and focus on the players who look like they're standing still. Use your electric arrows and take pot shots through the smoke. It's always worth a try. But one of the best strategies is using the electric arrow to finish off injured enemies behind cover. When you hit a body shot and the enemy moves into cover, just put the arrow either on or next to their cover to almost instantly deplete their health. If anything, it will just force them out of cover again for another shot. Almost always make sure that the arrow is set to no bounce, as the ricochet on the arrow is pretty random. However, if you're fighting in enclosed spaces, you can blind fire it round the corner with the bounce on for some cheap, easy kills. And talking of cheap, easy kills in enclosed spaces, the grenade on Luna is very strong if you cook it down to about 2 seconds and throw it round a corner. It can basically one-shot full health enemies. This also works if you injure an enemy behind cover, aim the grenade on the top of the cover with the provided visual tracker, and have it explode right as it lands on their head. And don't forget to just put down your spawn beacon whenever it's available. Even if you're close to your base spawn, it's useful to have a guaranteed spawn for you and your squad, and usually I would recommend using the Claymore gadget in games like this. However, the Claymore in this game seems to either not work or just get teammates team killed, so not worth it. Now, unfortunately in this game, long-range sniping is almost non-existent in the warfare mode. Sniping over 100 meters almost never happens in 4 out of the 5 maps available. The only time you ever need to think about bullet drop is honestly in the map Ascension. 99% of warfare situations with even the lowest velocity snipers, just aim for the top of the head within 200 meters and you're almost guaranteed to hit them if they're static. Obviously this depends on your scope zoom, but even then the range of engagement in this game is almost always within 100 meters. The only time you ever get to shoot enemies over 200 meters is in the Ascension map. However, this is very different in the extraction mode. Now before we get into loadouts, let's talk about what scopes we should use in warfare mode. Most fights will take place within 200 meters, therefore a high zoom scope is actually not necessary unless you struggle with precision. Remember the scope glint that's active on any scope over a 4x? Well, we can abuse the loophole in this logic by only using a 3x scope on our snipers. You can still snipe players hundreds of meters away with the 3x viewpoint thanks to the ridiculous velocity of the snipers without the risk of revealing your position. And you can use the calibration to give a slight increase to zoom level, or even use the independent FOV option in the gameplay options to further artificially increase zoom level. In my opinion, the 3x scope is all you need to use in this game, as it gives you the fastest aim down sight speed, better concealment, and the clearest sight picture around your targets. If you ever want to use a long range scope, then you might as well just use the scope that gives you the exact bullet drop at any range. This scope completely trivializes any long-range sniping, as you simply use the designated range find button on the terrain or cover next to the enemy. The dot moves to the exact point you need to aim for within that range, and then you just click on their head with the dot. It really is that simple, no zeroing required. And now of course, the loadouts. In the warfare mode, we want to use the snipers with prioritized aim down sight speed and fire rate with a little bullet velocity. These 3 stats are the only thing you ever need to worry about. Recoil, accuracy, and stability are irrelevant, as a bolt action should be unaffected by these as you're rechambering. In my eyes, there are only 2 snipers that are fully worth using at different ranges. The M700 at medium to long range, and the R93 for close to medium range. Obviously, you'll need to use the SV98 as your first option before you unlock the others. So this is the build I would aim for, with a balance of aim down sight speed and bullet velocity. Doesn't require a lot of attachments. Once you unlock the R93, you shouldn't need to use the SV98 again, as the R93 then encompasses all the benefits of the SV98 whilst aiming and shooting faster. This is the build that I would use on the R93 for maximum aim down sight speed coupled with the maximum fire rate, whilst not completely ruining the bullet velocity. A velocity of around 800 meters per second is more than enough for the ranges that you're going to use it at. Now for longer ranges, most people would assume that the AWM sniper would be the best choice for warfare. Unfortunately, the aiming speed and fire rate on the AWM is so bad that the M700 basically outclasses it in almost every way. Yes, the AWM can reach the highest bullet speed of 1300 meters a second bullet velocity, but doing so means an abysmally slow aim and fire rate. However, the M700 can hit 1200 meters a second whilst maintaining a better fire rate and aim down sight speed. Here's the medium to long range build that balances bullet velocity and aim down sight speed. You might not notice it straight away, but adding this frame gives you access to many more attachments than before that increase handling. I'm going to link my favorite sniper builds in the description and the comments alongside the ones I've showed here, and to use them, simply fully unlock the gun, go to Loadouts, Recon, Weapons, Modify, Loadouts, Import, paste these codes to use the exact same build, and make sure you fully unlock the snipers first. For the sidearms, I would firstly recommend the Desert Eagle, as you can get lucky one-shots to the head even with random hipfire, and it's a guaranteed 2-shot to the chest. Just pull it out and start shooting with hipfire at point blank. If precision isn't necessarily your thing, then the extended Glock or 93R is a close second. But do not expect to outshoot any SMG in the game. Now, as for loadouts for the extraction mode, we have to take into account the price of a sniper as well as the stats. In my opinion, the best builds for snipers in the extraction mode are the cheapest, as you're very likely to lose them constantly. Simply the base R93 or SV98 and any cheap scope, even a 2x, is a better option for 90% of the extraction game mode. Use the purple or gold ammo and keep it in your safe box when you need it to really maximize its use without risking its cost. You can put on a long barrel and suppressor if you can afford it to increase the velocity, and if money's no object, then by all means build the M700 from the warfare mode, or build an AWM with red arrow to get one-shot chest shots. But honestly, the cheapest snipers are incredible value for money in this game. And there you go, that essentially covers the basics of sniping in Delta Force. It's definitely my favorite way to play the game, especially with how unforgiving this game can be at close range. If you think I missed anything that would have helped others, then just put it down in the comments below. And if you learned something new, then please give it a like and consider subscribing, as it helps me know I've done a decent job, and it might help you again in the future with more guides. And as for me, I'll be sniping extensively on Delta Force, and I'm certainly looking forward to new maps and snipers in the future. I hope this video helped you, thanks for watching, and Happy New Year. Cheers.